We are continuing in our discussion of learning leadership principles from Bible leaders. And today we will pick one called Hezekiah, the king. So we are entitling this discussion, Leadership, Hezekiah Style. He was a pious king of Judah who succeeded his father called Ahaz about 726 BC. And he died about 698 BC. And it's important to understand that this king, Hezekiah, was a king who, in all his ways, needs to be copied. You know, one of the first lessons we learned from him is that your background does not determine your future unless you allow it. That's why now it's dangerous to be just looking at a father and assume that his children will either be good or bad just on the basis of the kind of father. Your background can influence what you become, but cannot determine what you become. That's why you find a home where they have many children. Some come out well, some don't come out well. Yet they were brought up by exactly the same people, because you have a role to play by choosing whether to listen to God and obey him or to be a prodigal son. And I think that will be an important thing. You know, this king we are discussing is a 12th king of Judah, and he is a son of an apostate, Ahaz. Ahaz was somebody who didn't trust in God. And his wife was called Abi or Abijah, who ascended the throne at the age of 25 BC, 726, like we saw earlier. This young man, Hezekiah, because 25 is pretty young, was one of the three most perfect kings of Judah. When you study the book of Kings and of Chronicles, you'll be happy to follow the example of Hezekiah. In 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 5, we read, Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. Yet, we are not discussing Ahaz, but I would like to encourage you to go and read the story of Ahaz, King Ahaz. He was a terrible king. Yet the son came out to be somebody described in 2 Kings as one who trusted in the Lord, unlike his father, and there was no one like him because of following what God wanted. My friend, as a leader, do you become a leader like the one you took over from? Do you become a leader like your parents? Do you become a leader like your politicians? Or can you determine to channel a new course? And the one big lesson we learned from Hezekiah is that any leader can determine what are good values, which is a good strategy, how is good relationship, and follow it, despite that he's not copying anyone. He's just listening to leadership principles as given in the Bible. And that's what I'm hoping will become true of you. You know, one of the things I have resisted in my leadership was taking over my predecessors' enemies. Hey, you know that stuff? He's terrible. He's bad news. Now, he has not done anything wrong to me. He did something wrong to you. Why should I take over your enemies? Why should I take over people because they were not good to you? I'll listen to you. I'll be careful with the person, but I will not copy you. We can hate off with that person whom you had a difficult time, and he can become one of the best subordinates that has ever existed in that company. So you need to understand that danger of picking up your parents' enemies, picking up your predecessors' enemies, and determining, because your predecessor says this girl is useless, that she's actually useless. Give her a chance. It might turn out she's actually useless, but it is you to determine it. You are the new leader. Determine for yourself. So I'm not suggesting you don't listen to predecessors. Listen to them. But do not make your decisions on the basis of what they say. The second thing I learned from this young man, Hezekiah, is that it is important to sort out spiritual condition before social and physical conditions. He has taken over a land that has a lot of spiritual and social issues. And decided before starting to build, and he actually did it, to expand the kingdom, the first thing is work on your teamwork. Sort out interpersonal issues. Sort out social issues. You know, in 2 Chronicles 29, verse 3, we read, in the first month of the first year of Hezekiah's reign, he opened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. Before he has done anything else, he wanted to impact the spiritual life of his team. You know, you can be emphasizing the goals and for the year. But if the team is not spiritually and socially okay, you will not reach where you are going. A leader is not a leader of task. He's a leader of both the task and the doers of the task. And I'm suggesting to you, even before you concentrate on the task, think about the people, create teamwork, put in new values, sell to them the importance of following biblical principles. And once the team is united and committed in values, it will be far much easier for the team to actually reach the tasks. That's what we learned from Hezekiah. Sort out your spiritual condition before the physical conditions that follow. You know, the third thing we learned from him, and every leader needs to learn, is to study the culture of the organization he is leading. Find out things they do. And do not accept when you say, why do we do this? Oh, that's the way we have always done it. That's not a good answer. Don't quarrel with the person who has told you that, but it means you have some homework to do. Every behavior has a belief and a history behind it. When you see people behave in a certain way, there is a reason, and you have to invest time in it. Hezekiah invested time. And you know what the things he discovered? Numbers chapter 21, verse 9, we read, so Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. God used a snake, looking up to it, to heal. The snake wasn't healing. God was unhealing, but he said, look up. Do you know many years later, all the kings that followed, they simply allowed the thing to continue being worshipped. So Hezekiah said, that's a history, but it's not a good history. So he destroyed that brazen serpent, said to have been the one used by Moses in the miraculous healing of the Israelites, which had become an object of worship and adoration. What are the things in your team that may have a bad history and people are continuing to do them? Do you research the culture of your people to discover the belief system that's not a good belief system to continue? For example, how will they worship God when they have turned one of God's creation into an act of worship? We are supposed to worship the Creator, not the creation. But here, because God used that serpent to do a miracle, they started worshiping the serpent. The brazen, not a real serpent, but a brazen serpent it was made. So what is it in your new leadership role? Are things people do and you don't understand why? Find out. When you discover that the behavior has a bad history, do not be quick to destroy it, but discuss with the people. Why are you doing this? And the believers will did it, and then you can remove wrong worship, because it's going to influence whether those people are going to follow proper values or not. The next thing that we learn from Hezekiah is you as a leader should let the team know that God is central to your leadership. Let the people know the source of your leadership. They may not become Christians themselves, but let them know you are a Christian. They may not respect God, let them know you respect God. Because once people understand you, and they admire you, they respect you, what happens is that they will not do those kind of things in your presence. As you remember, working with non-Christians, and we are in a place, they forget I'm there. They're starting to talk trash. Oh, sorry, Mr. Nganga. I did not realize you are here. I'm not telling them to stop, but because they want to be friends with me, there are things they can talk in my absence, but they can't talk in my presence. it's important that you are not a secret disciple, that you become open to your standards. Do not force them, you can't anyway. But you yourself must be clear about your values. But it's not enough to just have values and say, these are my values. They will not believe you. They will know you are just talking. They need to see consistently that you are following your values, number one. Number two, they want to see you risk your job, risk the company, risk whatever, simply in order to keep your values. Then they say, these values are not just verbal. He believes in them. Once they know these are values you believe, you respect you and follow you. And hopefully, you influence a few of them to take on your values. And your team and your company and your kingdom will start becoming better because of these values. So, here we are not just talking about any values speak from anywhere. We are talking about biblical values. You must be clear to the people that you follow biblical values. That way they don't ask you to do things. I know, even in my working life, there are people who want to do some funny things and they don't talk in my presence because they know I will not participate with them stealing. So therefore they will not involve me. The reason people involve you in wrong things because they don't believe in your values. You haven't either told them or it doesn't look like these are values that you take dear. But one of the things I really like about Hezekiah is he was not a defensive guy. He was a guy on the offensive. Once he understood what are the issues, he didn't wait for the issues to come to him. He went to them and attacked them. We read in 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 18, while the Philistines had raided towns in the foothills and in the Negev of Judah, they captured and occupied Beth-Shemesh, Ajro and Gedoroth, as well as Soko, Timnah and Gimzo, with their surrounding villages. Then now, in 2 Kings 18:8, we now read, from the watchtower to fortified city, he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory. Gaza was their capital. He did not, the previous kings allowed the land of Judah to be taken. Hezekiah decided to attack. And you know, if you play the defensive game, whether you are leading a company or a country, it will mean that the fight will always be in your soil. If there's anything destroyed and bombed, it will be yours. After the war has ended, it will be you to repair your own land. And that is true also of terms of values. When you are not very clear, and you always say, oh, no, sorry, I don't do that. Why wouldn't you have told them in advance? Why wouldn't you have told them what they are doing is wrong? Because if you tell them it's wrong, the battle will be in their court. They will be trying to defend themselves. But you allow them to come and do the evil things where you are. It means you will be on the defensive. A good leader must take the offensive. They must calculate what is important to them, and they must openly extend it. Hezekiah knew what the land of Israel was, and he decided to attack, and he defeated the Philistines, who were a menace to previous kings. And I think that's one of the things you need to ask yourself. Are you on the defensive? When you have taken over a company, are you intending to hand over the same size of company? Or are you looking at expanding the company? When you have taken over the country with a GDP of this amount, are you intending to hand over with the same GDP? What are you doing that is taking the offensive and leading your thing to become a bigger thing or not? Hezekiah teaches us it's not enough to maintain where you are. You need to maintain that plus what you took over plus improve things and be clear where you are going. The next thing I see about Hezekiah is he needed to show that God is greater than your strongest enemy and become a risk taker. You know, if you say you value God and you believe in God, how come you do not trust him to help you? A Bible believer, a God believer is a risk taker. That's why it goes with the previous point of becoming defensive. He will take risks. Once he has consulted God and he knows that's God's will is, he will take the risk and go into it. And 2 Kings 18 verse 7 we read, and the Lord was with him, that is Hezekiah, He was successful in whatever he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. Remember, Assyria was a superpower. Oh, question mark. What? How can you dare? But he just said, I can't continue paying you tribute. I believe in a God who can defeat you. 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 20 says, as for the other events of Hezekiah's reign, all his achievement, and how he made the pool and the tunnel by which he brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? He was able to do aqueducts and get water into the city, such that even if you're outside and you blocked the outside, water would still be coming to the city. He was a guy who thought of security, thought of the future, and attacked even a superpower, and decided he cannot be controlled by superpower. Why? Because he trusted in God, and the Lord was with him. That's why he was a success. So we are not asking you become a risk taker without calculating your risk. Calculate your risks, talk to God, then take the risk. Of course, the risk means it could backfire, but you are willing to move off forwards rather than defend your little turf. The other thing we learn about this leader, Hezekiah, is that he was a man of prayer. And I think it's you need to become a man of prayer means you before you go to people with your problems, you go to God with your problems, even if you are dealing with your personal challenges. 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 1 says, in those days Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, went to him and said, this is what the Lord says, put your house in order because you are going to die. You will not recover. Then verse 4 and 5, before Isaiah had left the middle court, the word of the Lord came to him, go back and tell Hezekiah, the ruler of my people, this is what the Lord says, the God of your father David says, I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you. On the third day from now, you will go up into the temple of the Lord. He is sick. He fears he will die, but he takes his personal problems to God. And God initially, through Isaiah, says, you are dying. Just put your house in order. He cries to God more. God stops Isaiah going away and says, actually, I've heard his prayer. I'll extend his time. You can't lead. Leading involves a lot of challenges because you deal with your own personal challenge, plus the challenges of competitors, plus challenges of your own staff. My friend, learn to take your problems, not just to the boardroom, but to prayer. The more senior you become, the more important your personal quiet time becomes, your time with God. The busier you are, the bigger the challenges, the more you must guard and protect the hour of prayer. When you talk to God and listen to him. He will handle organizational problems. He also handle your personal problems and could do miracles like he did for Hezekiah. But you need to avoid naivety. Becoming a Christian, becoming a normal prayer does not mean you are naive. Avoid naivety. You must analyze offers, even if those offers are from friends. And this is where we are learning from Hezekiah. One time when he decided not to pray, decided not to ask things, and yet ended up in trouble. My friend, it means that do not be quick to make any decisions without analyzing the situation. But the most difficult things are things that are offered by friends. Your own friends could easily win you. So, and remember, the same friends are the ones who will build you. But remember, responsibility for decisions does not go with your parents, does not go with your friends. It is yours. So analyze the situation. Just see this, what went wrong with Hezekiah. 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 17. The time will surely come when everything in your palace and all that your predecessors have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left, says the Lord. Why did it happen? Because having an embassy coming from, an ambassador coming from Babylon, ostensibly to compliment Hezekiah on his getting well, you know. But the truth of the matter is, they were coming to create alliances with an enemy. And he favorably received them without asking any questions, and started showing them all his treasures, which he had accumulated over time. For this Isaiah foretells the punishment that shall befall the house of this king. How many times have you given information you should not have given? How many times have you made decisions you should not have made? They never forced Hezekiah to show them the wealth, but he went ahead and did. How much of your secrets are being given to the wrong people just because you haven't thought through what you are doing? Of course, you must have friends, but even with your friends and relatives, you must be able to tell what to say and what not to say. You know, he got towards the end, he got even into issues of bribing. This same guy was daring a superpower reach a level where he wants to bribe the enemy. You know, there's something we say in vernacular, Gomai nana yonego de jero. The demons will occupy you more when you entertain them. I'm trying to translate the Kikuyu saying into English. In other words, if you don't want demons to camp in your own turf, never give them a room. You give them little room, they will take more room. And it's exactly the same when you show fear and give in a little. Oh, the person, so this guy could give in. As a leader, do not allow yourself to be manipulated. Make a stand. A wise stand, yes. Make a stand. You know, the two invasions of Sennacherib occupy the greater part of the scriptures records concerning the reign of Hezekiah. The first of these took place in the third year of Sennacherib. That's around BC 702, and occupies only 3 verses. And we read, so in 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 15, so Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal palace. At this time, Hezekiah, king of Judah, stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. My friend, the moment he did that, he was back into the control of the Assyrians. And now they came another time. That's what we read in the story of this. You need to understand clearly, giving in a little just opens the enemy to manipulate you. That's why when you have a problem, don't lie. Because lying is giving in to the enemy. Then when you lie to cover up the first mistake, you have to lie another time to cover the second lie. Then you have to lie the 4th time to cover the first two lies. And you have completely lost your route. And you are preparing for your downfall, if it has not already happened. So we are learning good leadership means you don't ever side with the enemy. Don't bribe the enemy. Because that way, you are sure he will return. Make a stand. Deal with him. Of course, I'm not saying you cannot be diplomatic, but don't start bribing him. You know, you must act as you know your battle is the Lord's. Despite that failure, Hezekiah finally remembered only God can actually handle the problem I have. You know, Sennacherib sent against Jerusalem an army now another time under 2 officers and your cupbearers, the orator Rabshakeh, with a blasphemous and insulting summons to surrender. But Isaiah assures King Hezekiah he did not fear, promising to disperse the enemy. That is 2 Kings 19 verse 6 and 7. Isaiah was very useful in listening to God and assisting the king. I want to ask you, which is your kitchen cabinet? Do you have people who talk to God? They may not necessarily be in your leadership. They may not be in your cabinet. They may not be in your management. Do you have people you talk with? We are told William Wilberforce had such a team that used to pray with him. Although not in parliament, but they helped him to do research. I am really impressed by the life of Wilberforce. I would really encourage you to read his biography. Now, we learn that Isaiah was such a person to King Hezekiah. Accordingly, that night, after Sennacherib has given warning and insulted God, an angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. Hezekiah only lived to enjoy for about 1 year more his well-earned peace and glory after this defeat. He slept with his fathers after a reign of 29 years in the 56th year of his age. He lived. He got power 25. He finished. He died when he was 56 in BC 697. So do you understand then that God was able to defeat this same one? Earlier he was bribing the king, giving him money. But now when he listened to Isaiah, kept the stand, he did not even have to fight. He did not even have to fight them. They actually fought themselves dead. Just look at the actual verses. In 2 Kings 19 verse 6, Isaiah said to them, tell your master, this is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid of what you have heard, those words with which the underlings of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it. Then he went up to the temple of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. He has this insulting letter. Then verse 14 says he spreads it. Then in verse 35 of 2 Kings 19, that night the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000. Not a few people. It was a big army, almost 200,000 people. All died. Not killed by the Israelis, killed by God himself. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. I hope as we finish, you can see the value. All human beings have their weaknesses, and we have seen the weakness of Hezekiah. But it's good he learned quickly, and he learned to rely on God, and God does finish. Now, it's very important to understand, the battle for a man of God does not belong to him. The battle belongs to God. Whoever becomes an enemy to you is choosing to be an enemy of God if you are walking with God. And so it means you and God on the same side, there's no way you ever be defeated. So you need to take courage as you deal with all the enemies that choose to be enemies. You should not be creating enemies yourself. But if people choose to attack you, remember you are not on your own. You are actually with God. So as we finish, I want us to repeat 3 things about Hezekiah. Do not feel tied to history. The fact that you have such bad parents, the fact that you had such bad teachers, the fact that your predecessor was such a disorganized guy does not determine your success. And it will be important to understand that. Number 2, become a risk taker. Don't become the kind of a leader who is only on the defensive. Never listens to what God can achieve through you, because then you will not get into leadership. But that is importantly, be a man of prayer and have people who also pray to be your friends and whom you can share. And because as you share with them, they are going to take whatever you share with them to God, rather than by just talking behind your back. And if that's the leadership you have, you are assured of several things. Number 1, you'll be friends with God. Number 2, the people you lead will enjoy your leadership. Number 3, you'll achieve great things in every way. Thank you very much.